There we go. Uh-oh. We're going to pause this just a moment. Actually, cancel that. All right. Sorry about that. I just sat down to get started, and Cat decided he needed to announce that he was going to hurl. There's some health issues going on. We're going to get it checked out tomorrow. So, anyway, off of that note, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, whatever it is for you. I'm Brent, an author, amateur world builder, writing educator. You can find me as werewolf_dr. _dr on Patreon, Ko-Fi, YouTube, here obviously, or werewolf-dr on Bluesky. I will put links in the chat here real quick, or underneath if in the description if it's on YouTube. So, after that excitement, sorry, I'm listening in just in case he decides to announce that he needs to hurl again. Hopefully he will not. There are lots of issues going on there. Anyway, today, I think, I don't really have anything massively planned, but I was thinking I will chat about a few things and work on some things. Because I've got a couple different, so right now I have 3 basic projects going on. The oldest of them is that Junction multiverse I've been working on for most of the last year, if not the last year. That one's going to be put on hold for a little bit. It's basically a project of Finn. It's basically a project of getting things out of my head. The second one is this, what I've got in the description here as fictional nonfiction world building, which I guess I'm going to tentatively call Haven. That one is more of a project of, that one's more of a fun project. That one's also a little bit shorter in many respects, so it's one I'm going to continue on as I'm doing the more recent project. The more recent one, which is more of a project of, I guess on a totally mercenary level, it's a project of income slash legacy slash IP and all that sort of stuff, is the fourth book. So as of Friday night, this was kind of strange. So Friday night, I was watching a Twitch stream, talking to some people, and then about went up to turn in, and a couple minutes before turning in, this kind of thought occurred to me on my way. Less than a couple minutes, less than a minute or so before I turned in, this thought occurred to me, and I turned in, went to bed, and about 20 minutes later, got up, went to the other room with my phone, and typed up rough outline for several chapters for a book. Over the course of the weekend, I kind of refined that into 10 relatively rough chapters, or slightly refined, slightly rough chapters. And as of yesterday, I started turning that outline into a written, complete outline, and outlining individual chapters. So right now, I am outlined for introduction through chapter 4. I've got about 5 more chapters plus a conclusion to outline, assuming I actually do a conclusion. I hate conclusions. Conclusions are my nemesis when it comes to writing, so I may or may not do one. I try to avoid them if I can. I gotta look back at the old books and see if I had conclusions in those, because I want to make sure they're all formatted the same way, basically. So basically what that project is going to be, so my second book was sort of a guide for making magic systems and such. My third was a guide for building societies in predominantly secondary worlds, but also urban fantasy, paranormal romance. You can work in those cases as well, for gaming, writing, whatever. And this one, I think, is going to be more focused on the building faiths, deities, religious institutions, and their relationships to society, to magic, to other things in the world, as well as the individual components that kind of go into them. Built out of a lifelong love of or interest in mythology, and probably 30-some year interest in comparative religions of various sorts. In the process of of putting down some notes, I've realized just how many books on various on religious orders, religious history, theology in general, I've kind of amassed over the years. So that's kind of coming into play. That's going to be coming into play as things go in, including things from the handful of religious studies classes I took as an undergrad that I still have lying around. They're probably outdated, but some of it's not probably so much. Anyway, my basic idea, my basic outlines, and I'm doing this sort of in a more or less classic outline format. I love these little, so we've got like a introduction outline and that sort of thing. I love these Mead, I don't remember what size they are. They're like 6x9, 5x9, whatever they are, 6x9 notebooks. They are phenomenal. I love them. They're cheap. They're like $2, $2.25, and I have written multiple books using them, among other things. They are great for notes. Part of the whole structure here, I'm going to get a little bit of light because it's gotten dark and cloudy out there. There we go. That's better. So part of my process, I do a different process with this sort of writing than I do with some other things. My world building writing process usually is, let's think of where my starting point is, and then what does that starting point need in order to exist? What kind of structure goes around it, what kind of things are necessary to get those and understand those and that sort of thing. My and then I just kind of throw things together based off of that as they kind of come to me. The the one I'm currently working on, this Haven one, and everything's got a different notebook. They got 3 notebooks going on right now. The Haven verse is more of a narrative, not really narrative. It's more of a in-world discussion of the world building. So that's a little bit different in that regard for me as far as structure and process goes. But for nonfiction, for books and such, my general structure is that I like to create an overall outline. So it's basically a big picture, global outline of all of the chapters and kind of some main ideas that might be in those chapters. Then I build chapter by chapter outlines that take the big ideas, and that would be the sort of subheadings, if you will, and break those down into what could be paragraphs, what could be collections of paragraphs, key ideas, key main things I'll come back to. So ultimately, and then from there, I will take notes by hand based on the outlines, and then when I type up the notes, I type up the notes in paragraph form. So I'll have like a bunch of bullet point type notes, and then once I have where I've covered everything I want to cover in that chapter, I will sit down with those notes and type them up in paragraph form in a way that kind of flows. Then I'll come back, and the big thing, I follow the route. I think it was maybe Stephen King who had the thing about the first draft is for you, the second draft is for other readers. So that first draft, I'm just kind of putting together, spewing out these ideas, these words in a semi-coherent fashion, and then I'll go back and revise and clean it up and make it better. So that's kind of where that's standing right now, and where that process is going to go in. And throughout, with these guidebooks, or these guide ones that I've been doing, the last 2, I really have tried, I don't know if I've succeeded incredibly well, but I know I have tried to be more in the realm of suggestive or inspiring rather than prescriptive. I'm not really a fan. I've seen a lot of world building books, writing books that are very prescriptive. They're very much you must do A, you must do B, you must do C, otherwise it's not being done right, or something along those lines. I really wanted these to be more, here are some things to think about. Here are some ways these have been handled by other people, referencing various either games or authors, or in some cases TV movie things, mostly books and games. And here's how these things may look in like our own world, or some recommendations of things that appear in our own world with this, to be less, here are the 5 steps to do A, because I don't think there are 5 steps to do A in anything in writing. There's not really, I don't think in writing, I don't think there's any, what's the word I'm looking for? There is no set checklist that if you do these 5-10 things, then this will be a perfect document, sort of thing. Writing is to use, I think writing is to use the old Greek, like Aristotelian, Platonic realm of things. a mix of art and a mix of art and science. Not really science. That's the word they used, but basically that there are elements that are that we can teach that are very structured, that sort of thing, like things like grammar, or things like potentially things like organization, that sort of thing. But there are other things where we get the art bit that you just have to play with and you have to experiment with and toy with. And those parts we can't really quantify in any meaningful way. So I try to bring that philosophy, that kind of approach to these particular books. The last two, as I was putting them together, and as I'm kind of going through this one, I'm hoping to do the same, where it's more of a, here are some things to think about to maybe inspire some things. Here are some ways those have been dealt with by other people, some different takes on them, some different ways to think about this possibility or this element of things. And here are some things to think about when we're looking at, for example, when we're thinking about introducing magic into a world. Well, what's going to happen there? We're not just dropping magic in and it's just going to be self-contained and nothing's going to be affected by it, because it's not dropping into a vacuum. It's dropping into a world. And when we bring that into a world, things are going to interact with it. Society is going to interact with it. Religions are going to interact with it. People are going to interact with it. Technology is going to interact with it. And all of these things are going to have different effects and different ways they're dealing with that. So societies may embrace it entirely and bring it into a completely egalitarian type. Magic is the same as anything else. Magic is a tool. They could bring it in more as a, we need to control this because it's dangerous. They could bring it more into a, we need to remove this from society because it's evil, or it's too dangerous, something like that. Religions may come by and say, look, we want to control magic. Magic is power. Power is something we want. Maybe we say it came from the gods, therefore it's all under our purview and we need to be in control of it. Or they may live and let live. They may be in, like, we are two different realms of things, much like, say, Discworld, where the wizards and the priests kind of do their own things. They recognize there are some spots where there's some overlap, but the majority of it is we're off doing our own things and we don't interact with each other much, except maybe politically, when we're trying to vie for some political favors or status or whatnot. Magic and technology, we've got long histories of, do they work together? Are they inimical to each other? Do they affect each other? All that sort of stuff. Long stuff with that. So part of the point of some of the last two and this, and I hope this one, is more kind of thinking about some of those things and kind of running through some possibilities and how might we approach these. What are some ways people have approached these in the past? Not to say you must do the same thing, but to hopefully provide some inspiration to do something, even if it's the same thing but in a different way, or to do something different with it. Just to kind of play with ideas and that sort of thing. So I'm a very big fan of playing with ideas and all of that. So a lot of things going on with there. A lot of things I'm hoping to do with it. Looking at some of the chapters are a little bit smaller than others. Basically, my rundown, let me log myself into this thing real quick. If I remember what that is that? Maybe that? Yeah, it is that. Awesome. So, excuse me. Yep, already there. Already cool. Awesome. So, how I'm breaking things down at the moment, and these may not be exactly the same regardless, but how I'm breaking this down at the moment is to essentially, okay, figure out what is this doing? What are we doing here? What is going on? Okay, something is weird. Okay. Go away. Why can't I make that go away? I don't know. Okay, I don't know why this is going weird on me. Okay, whatever. One of the things I'm trying to do or thinking about with this is, or I'm setting this up as a means of, wow, that's a lot of stuff. I'm setting this up as more of a, okay, cool. A breakdown into what I think at the moment, at least, are big key sections, and those may not all be. They may not all be everything. I'm not trying to be all inclusive in this regard or exhaustive in my collection of things. I'm trying to hit the highlights. So right now I'm looking at basically a 11 or 12 space breakdown of throwing an introduction, throwing in a chapter on myths, predominantly looking at different, just a moment, different types of myths and how these work, where they come into play, all that sort of stuff. Here we go, buddy. We'll get the sick boy up here. You can come up here and just be a good... Yes, there we go. And then the sort of like purpose, multiple purposes of the religions. We got the sort of in-world, in-game, whatever purpose, the purpose of the faith, why it exists, which can be multiples of, obviously. And also from the author perspective, the creator perspective, why does this religion, why does this faith exist? What's the purpose? What are we putting in there for a particular reason? Is it just there to be sort of like background? Is it there to be verisimilitude? Is it there to be a focal point or like a patron for characters, that sort of thing? Next chapter I think is going to be the types. So some different types of religions classed in various ways. Yes, exactly. And the feline religion, because we all should worship the cat, shouldn't we? Yeah. Okay. Yes, you're purring. Some cosmology for a chapter. So looking about, I'm going to focus there predominantly on things like where the divine exists, where it lives, afterlife, the physical world, and whatever other realms happen to exist, and how, if at all, these are connected to each other. And if they're not connected to each other, then we have to figure out how there's communication between them, that sort of thing. You throw in a chapter about deities, gods, and related beings. So that will cover things like gods, divine servitors, demigods, all of that stuff. Looking into like the nature of them, whether they exist or not, how active or inactive they are, that sort of thing. Interactions with mortals, all that fun stuff. Let's see, 6 is going to be probably structure. So how is the religion structured? That could be the organization of the faith. That could be clergy, who, how, all that stuff. That could be organizations within it. So many have clerical organizations, lay organizations, monastic organizations, militant, etc. Rituals within the faith, anything from festivals and rites of passage to excommunication to death and birth rituals, symbols of the faith, symbols of position within the faith, holy texts, laws and rules of the faith. That sort of thing is part of that structure, will be part of that structure. Yes, exactly. I'm not giving you enough attention, am I? I need to give you more attention, huh? Yes, I do. Chapter 7 is going to be more like, these are all like tentative, rough, everything can change. But chapter 7, I'm looking at history and evolution of the faith. So, things like how did it start, how did it spread, is it within a culture, beyond cultures, does it involve conversion or expansion, any of that stuff, what kind of divisions have come into play. different sects, different heresies, regional variations, all that sort of stuff. 8 is going to be more like the relation between the religion and society, its role in society, politics, government, power, all that sort of stuff. 9, its relation to magic, or religion, its relation to magic, the nature of the relationship, control, clerical magic, source of magic, all that sort of stuff. 10 is going to be basically the religion's relationship to things like various races in the world or heritages in the world. Its relationship and views on gender, sex, orientation, all that sort of stuff, and its relationship to technology and that sort of thing. Some of those could become a full chapter, or they may not. I don't know yet. Right now, I'm thinking I'm going to cover those 3 as one, but they might end up, as things go, breaking out into their own chapters. Conclusions up in the air. I'll have an appendix of like recommended reading and a bibliography of everything that I've referenced and brought up throughout it. I generally plan to bring in some secondary sources and some primary sources, so some novels and series and that sort of thing, RPGs and whatnot, as well as some research and writing and other things about different faiths and whatnot that can be applicable and such. So I've got a number of sometimes weird and strange books about different religious organizations, and sometimes some generic sociological studies or anthropological studies, and some other things that kind of come into play, and some religious studies doc pieces about them to take a look at that I'll bring to bear. Thank you for spraying stuff all over my book there, buddy. That was helpful. So we'll just kind of see where that goes. And hopefully, in a relatively short span of time, yes, there is some snot on my... Awesome. Thanks, Cat. There is indeed some snot on my notes. Awesome. Cat snot. Cat snot and cat furrow. 2 of the most important things to get on things. Okay, anyway. He's not a healthy boy right now. So yeah, I think I'm working on that. I'm working through some stuff with these things, giving myself my outlines, thinking about my outlines are subject to change, because as I go with things, as I'm writing stuff, as I'm taking notes, as I'm thinking about stuff, new ideas are popping into there, new things are coming into mind that I should probably include, and all of that sort of stuff. So things get changed and tweaked and polished and modified, and the things we intend to have in there are not necessarily the things that end up being in there. To quote one of my favorite authors, Ilona Andrews, who recently stated, how did she put it? As we started writing it and unpacking all the emotional undercurrents, it grew into its own chapter. This is the joy of writing, the unexpected discoveries. The unexpected discoveries are really, I think, an important part of writing and the writing process. So it's going to be affecting how how things get put together for me, and how this is going to end up, how the final version is going to appear in things, and that's going to determine that's going to be part of a lot of things coming into play. So everything always changes and shifts and moves around as it goes, because everything we're writing, everything we're putting together, we're picking up new things as we go through it. We're finding new things. All of that sort of stuff occurs as things go through. So I think what I'm going to do at the moment is, since there's not anybody seeming to want to chat at the moment, I'm going to kind of work my way through some more chapter outlines. Because I want to get some of that stuff down. I'm currently up to chapter 5 for outlining, which is going to be my chapter on the deities and related beings. And I'll typically use deities because it's more of a gender-neutral term, but also because in many cases I use it in my own world building. I prefer using deities versus gods, because most of the deities in the worlds I build are able to appear however they wish. So they can appear within certain restrictions, restrictions of their kind of domains. So they may appear, so for example, hunting deity may always appear dressed and clad as a hunter, but they may appear as any heritage they want, or as male, female, or anything in between. Their call. So in those cases, the idea of, in a lot of my own world building, the idea of gendering a divinity doesn't work, because they're kind of beyond these things in many respects. So one of the first things, I think I was going to potentially move. I had thought the other day, as I was looking at this yesterday, about moving something around here. Yeah, I think I'm going to. Okay, so this is part of where things get shifted around. So I'm thinking about moving things around and transferring some things. Part A under deities is going to move, and is going to end up going back to the types chapter, I think. There we go. I think that's going to be the way to go with that. So I think in the deities main area, one of the things we're going to be looking at is, and my organization is always going to shift around. The first difficulty I have with putting any of these things together is, how do I want to organize the chapters? And in the magic book, it kind of made sense to go with big picture, work down to small picture, then work into society. For societies, and for this one, it's more difficult for me to figure out, because really any stage, any of the 10 chapters could be a starting point. Same went for the last one, with the societies book. Any of the chapters of that book, any of the chapters of the building a society could be the starting point. So on one level, to some degree, it doesn't really matter which one comes first, because they're not in sort of a hierarchy of A has to be done before B, has to be done before C. They are really more of a free-flowing, amorphous thing, where you could start off at 3, go to 5, jump back to 2, move over to 8, and that's perfectly fine, and that works. So it's kind of, a lot of my organization here of chapters is more, it felt right at the time, or I've kind of obsessed over it a little bit and decided that this is what's going to keep me happiest. So some of that's going through with the chapter sections as well. And honestly, I think it's going to be best for me to just tear this page out, so I can actually see it next to the page I'm working on. So we get rid of all of this stuff. Get rid of all this ugly fringy stuff, and figure this part out here a little bit. So I don't like the organization I've got on here at the moment, because I think it was just jotting down whatever came to mind first. And I think those are probably best last where they are. But, or maybe, does it make more sense to start off with the kind of group / generations, or with the nature of, or with the existence of? I think it might be best to start off with the existence. So we're going to start off first with, I think, Oh, that should be a 1, not an A. A goes down here. Okay, so I think after we get kind of a quick rundown of deities, what's the place, all that sort of thing. Uh, I think after that, the logical place to go is the existence of deities. So, this question is going to be, whether they exist or don't exist and that sort of thing. So we'll break that down further. And it could be worth discussing, even if they don't actually exist. Because if they don't exist, it could still be believed in, or they may not be. They may not be believed to. They may not exist, but be believed to exist, or they may just not be believed to exist. A good example of that would be the latter part. We would bring this in would be Star Trek with the Klingons, where there's a wonderful quote from Worf. Oops, if I can spell this properly. Where Worf notes that in DS9, he states that where'd it go? That the Klingons killed their gods because they were more trouble than they were worth. So the gods don't exist anymore. They're not believed to exist anymore because the Klingons took them out. So that would be a potential case of we know they don't exist, but they did at one time type situation, which would be an interesting one I should probably bring up in the course of this. Like after existence, nature is probably the best way to go. And there are a couple different options for nature of divinities. I'm going to give myself to D to fill that out later. I think after we get to nature of, we discuss their existence, we talk about what they are, how they come into being, what kind of things they are. Maybe we get into groups or generations or layers. And I think that can come into play where we have families, So I think when we're talking about groups or layers or generations, we might have situations where, so for the Norse, we had two different families of gods. We have the Aesir and the Vanir. And they're technically from two different cultures, the one of which absorbed the other culture, but they are two different families of gods that are kind of interacting, intermarrying, all of that stuff. We may have philosophical divisions, like in the Dragonlance setting, where we have the gods of good, the gods of neutrality, the gods of evil. These are philosophical branching and groupings of things that do have some familial relations within them. And that Tachesis is the mother of some of as consort, or Sargonis is her consort, and some of the evil gods are their children, and all that sort of stuff. But predominantly, their division is philosophical. So that's another kind of variant or breakdown we could have in there. I think after that, we want to get to the activity. It's going to be, do we have inactive, limited, so I think we're going to have like inactive, who are, maybe they exist but they don't really get involved. Maybe indirect, they exist but they only get involved indirectly. Maybe they're limited in various things. Maybe they're active. And in each case, we're going to ask the question, why? Why are they inactive? Why are they limited? Why are they indirect? That sort of thing. Important questions to think about. And I think after that one, we'll go into 6, which will be symbols. I think that's a good way to go with that one next. And we have different kinds of symbols of divinity. Could be animals, could be colors, could be objects. Those are going to be our primary ones. These could be generic or unique objects come into play. Thinking of like the spear was kind of a generic object, but was also a symbol of Tyr in Norse, whereas the caduceus is a symbol of Hermes and Asclepius in Greek, and it's a unique object in many respects. I think after that, leave a little bit of space to add anything else I might want to say about symbols that comes up later. Part 7 of that chapter. This is going to be a fairly big chapter because we're dealing with gods. And there's a whole bunch of stuff we can do with that. We're going to have divine servitors and semi-divine beings, because we can have multiple layers of that sort of stuff going on. Divine messengers and all of that sort of thing. We'll give us a little bit of space for that as I come up with it, because everything I'm putting down here is just very, very generic, very, very broad right now. And even these outlines I'm doing for chapters may get redone at various points in time. Hello and welcome to whoever just stepped in. I'm kind of working through doing some chapter outlining for a book I'm working on that I'll probably start doing notes and things for next week. So I'm kind of 5 chapters in on doing a rough outline that I can use to flesh out and expand through notes and things into what will eventually be the book. My own writing structure process, I like having a broad overarching outline and then individual chapter outlines. But all the chapter outlines and things may get, what I'm kind of muttering to myself or saying to myself now as I'm kind of working through them, may get completely changed, may get added to, may get redone as I go through things and start. Because part of writing is a process of thinking. So as we're writing, we're thinking about things and new things come to mind or new approaches come to mind. So that may change all of these different outlines that I'm doing. Every outline I have has got lines through it and scratch marks and all sorts of other things going on it because it gets shifted around. Demigods, that's another one I want to bring in there, and we'll bring in a few things. Origins. Origins of demigods is a big one. Where they come from, how do they come into being, all of that sort of stuff. And that's going to also tie back to how divinities and mortals interact with each other. What else can we throw? Are we going to put in there? Commonality. So it's going to be, how often do we see them? How common are they in a particular area, society, etc. Abilities come into play. We're looking at classical Greek demigods. They all have some kind of power to them, whether it be strength or excessive cunning or certain ability to charm people with music, or as Orpheus or things along those lines. But in other cases, they may just be relatively normal people. In other cases, they may just have an exceptional lifespan or something like that. So abilities is going to be one of those things I think is going to be a good one to bring up and discuss. Let's see, demigods, I think, and society. Because in some cases, there's... So if we look at, say, ancient Greece, the demigods didn't really have a separate society. They just kind of were integrated into normal society. They were heroes within normal society. However, if we look at, obviously, say, Rick Riordan with the Percy Jackson series has demigods having their own culture, essentially having their own society outside of normal humanity and whatnot. Between either Camp Half-Blood or the New Rome. So they have their own little culture and society going on. There are enough of them to have their culture and society going on, which tells us something about the relationship between the gods and mortals. That if there are enough demigods to have a demigod society, that means gods and mortals are having relations quite often. Whereas if there are not enough of them to form even like a village, then demigods are pretty rare or unusual in some way, or they have some other reason for staying apart from each other. Another good example would be the recent Winter's Tales AP Castleton, where we have demigods having a whole city and their own kind of culture within that interacts with mortal cultures. So that's going to be... Let me see if I can do this. I don't know if this will actually work. Let's see if I can do this. Nope, only people in chat. Okay, fine. Screw that then. So kind of playing with some of these things. I think I'm going to put a little E category in there. Drawbacks. Are there any drawbacks of being a demigod? If we look at, say, Riordan and such, yeah, there are definite drawbacks. If you look at other situations, not so much. And then part 9. That's going to be a big chapter. I figure each chapter is going to average approximately 6,800 words, or about 25-ish pages, which is not bad. If I can pull that, that'll reach a minimum of 75,000 words. If it goes more, it goes more. The last book I shot for 75,000, I ended up with something more like over 90, closer to 100. Farland. Societies. Word counts. There we go. What were my word counts for that one? They were big. I've been using Excel spreadsheets to count my pages and my word counts and my changes to and everything. The last one was about 94,500 for word count. That added about 17 pages during the course of, about 17 pages and 6,800, wait a minute. That's roughly 850. Yeah, we'll say 850 between those. That'd be 6,450 words added in a couple different revisions. So it went from, that would be about 87,000. Went from about 87,000 to 94.5 between revisions. So my goal is about 75 for that one. It came up to about 95, a little under 95. So, but that's also a much bigger thing in some respects. So we'll see how things go. My goal here is going to be a minimum 70. It's going to be 75, which is the minimum for the publisher I've been working with, and we'll see where that goes. So last but not least, we're going to have Mortals Interaction With. That's going to be okay, cool. That gets me a good breakdown for that. I'm liking how that's looking there. I think in nature of, we also have to put in cool. Different things to think about, different things to throw in here. Lots and lots of stuff. So that kind of moves me into 6, structure. And I do like kind of doing these outlines and things a little bit. I don't recall how I did them with the last ones. It's been like three years or so since I started drafting the last one I did. But I'm kind of liking working with this idea of bringing, how am I doing this? Bringing an overall outline first, and then kind of to give me a rough structure to my thoughts, and then breaking that down a little bit further beforehand, rather than, I think maybe the second book or maybe the first book I outlined each chapter as I got to it, which also works and clearly worked because the thing got published, it got finished, but I think I like doing this route a little bit better in some ways. So yeah, just kind of thinking, breaking things down, thinking how things are going together, all of that sort of stuff. I do need real quick to grab this book because the one was checked out when I tried to get it yesterday. So I want to take a look at that for chapter 8 and how that's working through. How I kind of broke things down previously, just to kind of think about it again. So structure of the religion, we're dealing with, these are going to be all of the, I think these are going to be mostly the, I'm going to put this as structure, but I'm going to put it as kind of like the mortal elements. Still, I keep forgetting that's going to be Roman numeral 1. Okay, yes. And we'll break that down in those ways. Cool. And then we're going to get into point 2 will be organization. So that's going to be things like and this may get modified all over the place and look completely different by the time I get to it. But for now, this will do. And I'll be happy with that for the time being. A lot of this, always, I emphasize everything is just a working outline. It could change. It will be messed with. All sorts of stuff will happen with it. As Andrew says, we have the discovery of writing, the things we discover as we are going through it, that change and modify how we're doing things constantly. Who can join? How do they join? Even types of clergy, because there could be different types and different standings and different roles in some regards. What do I mean by standing? I don't remember what I meant by standing there, but clergy standing. That's going to be more part of society. Yeah, so I think here I don't really want standing. I want ranks. That's going to be the way I'm going to go with that one. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, so then after that we have 4, which is going to be, I don't like organization and organizations. Maybe I don't know, groups doesn't really seem, but it's not really like a sect or anything like that. It's more a let's find a synonym. These could be the companies, corporations, institutions, establishments, agencies, societies. No, none of those are really working. Maybe better than organization for the top one might be framework, or framework might be better. Yeah, I think framework might be better. We'll put that in. And this is where all these lines are going through my outline, and that's fine. On one hand, I would love to have a clean outline. On the other hand, I know better. A clean outline looks pretty, but a one that's all kinds of scratched up lines through things and all that stuff is more accurate and more helpful in so many ways. And there are all kinds of different breakdowns there into all kinds of different types of groups. That should have been up there. That's okay. Those are probably going to be our big ones. Okay, so then we go to part 5, which is going to be rituals. And those cover a bunch of different things. Okay, I think those are going to break down a little bit differently than I have them originally. I think we're going to go into... Oh, that's one of the things I also want to put in there. Well, I guess that would go under there. Yeah, it would go better under there. That's okay. Cool. Never mind that. I think B will be that. I think C will be... And that will be... So yeah, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. Okay, D. Excommunication, and what's the other one? It's to penance. Penance would work. That'll work. That's what I was looking for. Okay. I'm a bad lapsed Catholic. I don't remember any of the terminology from the church. Yeah. I think we're going to make, just because... Yeah, I think we'll just do it that way. We got the clergy, we got the laity, we've got the, what other groups we have that would fit in there? That would work. That'll work. I like that. Okay, and then back here, then we're going to have the, that would be number 7. That's going to be our symbols. And that could be iconography. What else could be used for that? Yeah, that would work. Okay. I guess that would fall under, rather than that, I guess it would fall under, these would all kind of fall under the idea of an amulet of sorts. I like that. That would probably work. Yeah, that would work. That's good. Okay. So then we get into history and evolution. So the first thing to note there is that those should be different. Awesome. Okay. 2. So I think when we're looking at the history of a faith, we want to look at a few different things. And I think the initial spot to start with is going to be the question of origins. And those are going to start off with, those could be mythological, those could be historical. I think both are the way to go with it. And we kind of talk about how those work. We can get into questions of things like spread. How does the faith spread? How does the religious spread? We do have cultural versus intercultural. We do have conversion. Which could be conversion by word. We could have conversion by force. We could have conversion by fiat. Those come into play. We could have no conversion, where it could be birth only. We might have any kind of expansion, whether it be geographic or otherwise. Uh, 4 is going to be division. So over time, over history, most faiths, every faith, whatever, they will divide, they will split, they will break up, and all that sort of thing. So we're probably going to have regional variations. And those regional variations could break out into heresies, or it could break out into sects, if I can spell properly, or even potentially into sort of spin-off. I don't really want to say well, I guess technically that would, well, those would fall under sects. Well, something like that case, that was a totally different, I guess we could call those, I mean, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but we'd call it a spin-off religion. We don't see it happen often, but we have seen it happen historically, where we get sort of, I think we've seen it maybe, I want to say 3 major times, possibly more, but it's not common, but it does happen, where a sect will spin off and become a new faith entirely. We can arguably say that this happened with essentially Christianity and Islam, where they were originally Jewish, and then Christianity kind of became a Judaic sect in a fashion, following a particular prophet, and then it spun off to form its own faith. And then out of that new faith, it's more complicated than that, but out of that new faith, a second new faith kind of spun out and spun off. So we could make that argument that we do have these sort of, that say regional variations can become heresies or sects, and sometimes heresies and sects can spin off into new religions entirely. Not necessarily majorly common, but certainly feasible and possible. And I'd want to wrap that up with something else in there, but I'm not really sure what exactly. Origin, spread, division. What else do I want to bring in there? I'm not sure at the moment, so I'm just going to leave that as a TBD. We'll see how that goes with that one. I will fill that in as I go with things, because that's going to be fairly late in the process. So I'm not massively worried about making sure that I get all of that. Now here, I want to take a look through this for society. So I talked about, I don't generally read my own work after it's already been published, but I know I spent like 22 pages, 21 pages talking about religion and society in this book. So I'm kind of looking at what exactly, I'm not going to necessarily say the same things, but I'm not going to worry about the how many side of things, because it's not as important at the moment, because we're looking at focusing on one and creating one and working with one. I got to make sure I spell people's names right. That is not correct. I always want to spell it that way. So what things did I mention there briefly? How many I don't care about at the moment. Detail is certainly a big thing, but that's not what I'm worried about in this particular case. Oh, that can go back to this part here. Actually, I got that. I got not all elements, not all detail necessary. Okay, cool. It's already in there. Awesome. Purpose, role, activity. I got those. Myths. I got that. Clergy, who is allowed, how can I join? All that stuff I've already gotten there. Education. I guess that would go back under here. Yeah, I should probably note that under here for them. Structure. Where did I put those? There we go. So for that, education, yes. That falls under kind of who can organize. I've got that stuff. I got a little bit of sects. I've already included that one. Places. That might be good to put in there. That would be important. Monastics I've mentioned. Organizations, yeah. Role in society. Yes. So that's where I want to put in some more here. I've got, yeah, role. So that's going to be, popularity, role with the law, politics, government. That's all I put in there. Okay, cool. Power, other things kind of come into play there too. Awesome. So that gets me a little bit more there, which is good. I should have looked at it earlier, but I didn't. So, you know, we deal with it. Something I should have looked at earlier to figure out, but, you know, oh well, that's okay. That's why all of this is able to be morphed and played with and messed around with. And I'm glad of that. So, I think as we look at the place in society, we want to look at the role in society. And that can get into things like the things like popularity and respect. That can be things like okay, so as we come down there, we get into things like politics and government. And we're going to get into questions of a few of those things. We're going to get into things like the And last but not least, cool, we'll break those down more as I get through there and figure out some more of that stuff. So that's going to look kind of nice. This is just really, really rough at the moment. I'm not like breaking down my breakdown. So I'm kind of going down into from the big Roman numerals to the capitalized letters, and I'm just kind of stopping at that layer. I'll get into things like breaking down those into the smaller Roman numerals and that sort of stuff. Actually, I'm not even doing the big letters in some cases. I think I do need to put sites and places in at some point in time. I'm not sure exactly where I want to do that. That seems like that would fit under structure with the organization side of things, but that might also be its own thing. I'm not really sure. I guess it would fall under structure because we're talking about both natural and man-made sites and their role. So that would probably fall under here. So that might be a number of section 8 for this. So we got temple shrines, we got other artificial spots, we've got holy sites, we've got historic sites. That would tie in there. Yeah, so I forgot to put those in. Now I've got those in there. That's a happy thing. That makes me happy to have all of that there. Did I set up a... Yeah, I did put up a conclusion outline. Yeah, screw conclusions. I don't want to do conclusions. But I will do them anyway, because what the heck, probably, in all likelihood. Why not? Awesome. So that's looking pretty good so far. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm up to chapter 9 out of 10, which is good. I'm going to do a quick rundown of chapter 9, which is religion and magic. All kinds of fun stuff going on there. So I think we're going to start off with a kind of quick overview. The relationship between, I think the way we need to go there is opposed, aligned, ignore, They could be opposed, they could be aligned, they could be ignored, they could be the same thing. I think that'll work for now. Let's see. Get the question of clerical or divine magic. You get that question of does it exist, all that sort of stuff. Last but not least in there, we'll get deities as source of magic, which is entirely possible in a variety of settings. So that's some of that stuff thrown through there. Awesome. That's a good starting point, good place to be with that one. We got relation to the world. So this is down to chapter 10. I am pretty happy with this. So I think pretty soon here I'm going to go ahead and just kind of sign off for a little bit. Figure out a few things, take care of some stuff. But I think that's a good start. I've had a good talk going on about the sort of my process, how this kind of is working out. I've got all but one chapter basically outlined, so it's a good place to be in terms of that project going. It's a good space to, next week I'll probably start doing some notes for the introduction. Since I've already got outlines there, I typically figure it takes about a week to 2 weeks to put together notes for a chapter, depending on how big the chapter is and how much I'm bringing into it. So my usual method is the first draft is just all my thoughts. Then I'll go off and do some research, and then I'll come back and do a second draft incorporating the research elements. And then I'll do a few more drafts, just kind of reading through and fixing up things, polishing, dealing with any typos, all of that stuff, but also cleaning up phrasing and reworking little things here and there. So usually words are added with each draft, but the first to second draft tends to have the biggest word count addition to it as I'm bringing in my sources and things, bringing in secondary materials and that sort of stuff. And then the third and fourth drafts have decreasing amounts of word count addition to them, because they're more just adding a little extra explanation here, tweaking this sentence here so it reads better, filing off some rough edges over here, that sort of thing. So we'll see how this goes, and I will definitely, this will be an interesting experience, since this will be the first time I will be writing a book and doing streaming. So I will kind of be chronicling some of this process through video, just to see what kind of happens with it. And we'll just kind of grow with this and see where things go. Should be fun, should be interesting. It's going to be a lot of work. They always are, but it's also a bit of a semi-passion project that has a bonus element of, eventually paying to some degree, and having some legacy sort of stuff. So this will be my fourth major piece of intellectual property, fourth book. So it'll be fun to see how this turns out, especially with the changed circumstances and messing around with things. So it'll be the third one I've written since 2021. So that's fairly close, because the last one before that was 2013, where I mostly wrote it in 2012. So that had its own challenges, both being the first, being a modification of a dissertation, and doing so with an infant. Now we've got a teenager, and that's not as big a deal. So anyway, I think on that note, I'm going to go ahead and sign out, or sign off. I am going to sign off as with my usual. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is for you. I am Brent, an author, amateur world builder, and writing educator. You can find me as werewolf_dr on Patreon, Ko-Fi, YouTube, and here, or werewolf-dr on Bluesky. All the links are in the chat, and we'll also go into the description if you're on YouTube. And on that note, I'm going to run over here to check out Somebody's Hero Live, who is working on building something. I'm not sure exactly what he's building, but he's building something, and it should be fun.